Into your hands, O Lord, I commend my spirit. Into your hands, O Lord.
Hello, I'm Brother James Koester of the Society of St. John the Evangelist. Today we are talking about silence and waiting upon God. A few years ago, I was speaking with someone who had known the community for about 40 years. We were speaking about our life as a monastic community and our practice of silence and solitude. I don't remember what I said, but it clearly didn't satisfy her. She felt the amount of silence we had in her life and the time we spent alone was, at best, odd, at worst, unnatural. Finally, not knowing what else to say, I said, "But this is what monks do. We spend time alone, in silence, so that we can think, pray, and reflect, and be alone with God." Either something in that clicked, or she still didn't understand me, but the conversation moved on. When I first came to the community, there were two wooden signs, one just outside the chapel and another in the pantry off the refectory. They both said in bold capital letters, "Silence." I don't know how helpful they were, as, at least in my experience, they seemed to impose something on us rather than draw something out of us. And that, I think, is what we mean when we speak of the quality of our silence and solitude. Is it being imposed upon us, or has it been drawn out of us? One of my favorite passages of Scripture comes from Galatians. I return to it often in my prayer. I use it as a benchmark in my life, as a way to determine whether or not I have strayed from my journey into the heart of God. We read, "The fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, generosity, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control." This is what I mean when I speak of silence being drawn out of us. Is our silence and the desire for solitude an expression of the fruit of the Spirit, or are we doing our best to ignore or shut someone out? Living as closely as we brothers do here at the monastery, we all know when someone is not speaking because they are doing their best to avoid us. The latter, I would suggest, is not real silence. It may be an absence of conversation, but it is not a response to the Spirit's gifts of love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, generosity, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. Father Benson, our founder, in his instructions on the religious life, speaks of mystical silence. Mystical silence, Father Benson teaches, is the soul's waiting upon God. He goes on to say, cherish this mystical silence. Keep the soul expectant, waiting upon God. As our rule of life says, the gift of silence we seek to cherish is chiefly the silence of adoring love for the mystery of God which words cannot express. Father Benson puts it this way: The love of silence must draw our hearts up to God. Heaven will then shine forth in our life, and we shall glorify God in all our utterances. This silence will be a glad and cheerful silence. There will be no gloom in it. So silence is the bond between the mind of humanity and God. And the soul that rises up to God learns to rest in God and in his loving care. Our life will be made joyous if we have real, unbroken fellowship with Jesus. If our silence truly is drawn out of us as a loving response to God who first loved us, then our silence, far from being gloomy, to use Father Benson's word, would be a sign that we are truly partakers in the divine life of God. Again, to quote Father Benson, in silence, we welcome the presence of the incarnate Word. So silence must be a real positive silence. Oh, if we felt the presence of God, if we all felt it, what a joyous community of fellowship with God. To speak with God is to become partaker of the eternal Word and Spirit. This is the quality of silence which we seek to cherish. It is marked by joy, happiness, and delight. And as Father Benson assures us, when we cherish the happiness of silence, then we become partakers of the divine life of God, who will be sure to pour God's divine gifts upon us in abundance. So here are some questions to reflect on. Where does meditative silence find a place in my life? Consider the difference between a good silence, the silence of being in nature or in prayer, and a bad silence, silence in the face of injustice, silence as part of the conspiracy of lies or false pretenses, silence used as a weapon to hurt someone. What are some of the ways silence can be used for good and for ill?